Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this discussion on the historical roots of extremist narratives in current debates across Europe. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to our in-person participants here with us today, and as well to those joining us online via Zoom. We're honored to have all of you here with us for this roundtable, which is a collaborative effort between the Arenas project and our Institute of Contemporary History in Ljubljana through our Digital Humanities, Resources, Tools and Methods program and the Political History program. The Arenas project brings together a multidisciplined consortium of 12 organizations. This is universities, NGOs, impact partners, and small and medium enterprises from 9 different countries. And it is dedicated to examining the impact of extremist narratives on political and social life in Europe and to understanding the discourses that they shape, particularly in relation to science, gender, and nation. So today we're joined by members of the Arenas project who will share their insights with us. Please join me in welcoming Claudia Jareño Gila, a Spanish history lecturer, Spanish history and civilization at the Sergi Paris University. Her research includes topics such as political, cultural, and social history of contemporary Spain, the history of feminism and the history of women, and the transnational circulation of ideas, discourses, and activist practices. Next is Katalin Miklossy, docent of political history and head of Eastern European Studies, works at the Aleksandri Institute, University of Helsinki. She focuses on the evolution of the rule of law with special interest in the impact of regional security conceptions on nationalism and conservatism. And with us is also Stephen Forti, lecturer at the Department of Modern and Contemporary History at the Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona. His research focuses on fascism, populism, nationalism, and the extreme right in contemporary times, with a special focus on comparative and transnational history. The roundtable is based on the key findings of the Arenas Work Package 3 report, and it is framed within the context of each of your individual skills and interests. And as we embark in this discussion, it is also essential to note that the contemporary moment we are living in is characterized by rising extremist narratives that seek to shape public discourse and policy. To provide some context, I would like to paraphrase just a section of the Arenas report. It goes like this. Extremist narratives have always existed. However, in the last 2 decades, their diffusion has increased considerably due to the internet and social networks, which have allowed their rapid viralization, amplifying their impact on our societies. All this happened in a context of polycrisis in which feelings such as distrust toward institutions and resentment toward the elites are shared by a significant part of the European population. The main ideological characteristics of the far right are nativism, that is the combination of nationalism and xenophobia, authoritarianism, and populism. Since the spread of these narratives is a challenge to liberal society, we took far-right parties and movements as the entry point of our research and of our talk today. So, if we all agree to take a moment to reflect on the significance of this topic, I'm confident that today's discussion will be informative, maybe thought-provoking, and will shed light on the complexities of this issue. Now, without further ado, I invite you to join us as we embark on this conversation. And Stephen, what is the connection between the past and the nation? What is the role of the past in national identity, and when can we talk about extremist narratives?
Well, thank you very much. Thanks to the Institute for giving us this opportunity to finally present the result of this task related to Arenas project about historical roots of extremist narratives, and thanks for the introduction. Well, I think is one of the most important questions that we try to find an answer in our project, and because as maybe you will see now, we are talking about and we work about 3 main topics, that is nation, gender, and science, and try to find also the interrelationship between them. But finally, we understand that through the 20th century and also finally nowadays, nation usually is like the common field where also extremist narrative related to gender or science, they are well created or updated or changing during time. So I think that to try to put on the table some ideas, then we can share also maybe debate later. I think one of the main points related to nation, taking account contemporary history and mostly, well, starting from the end of the 19th century, is the idea of nation as a living organism. That is quite well clear if we think now la nation de terre et de mort, no, of Maurice Barrès and Action Française in France at the end of the beginning of the 20th century, and how this idea during the first part of the 20th century, but also nowadays, is still alive. Because if we are thinking, for example, in one of the slogan of far-right Spanish party of Vox is España Viva, Leaving Spain, or in the same manifesto of Brothers of Italy of Giorgio Meloni, we can find a quote of Maurice Barrès and the idea that nation is a living organism. So it's I think a main point to take in account that we can find with some differences between different countries. And then we can have, I think, two most interesting consequences related to that and to an idea that could translate the idea of nation to something that we can consider extreme. And then we can debate what is extreme exactly and what is an extreme narrative. That is a crucial point of our project and a big debate that we have since a lot of times, and obviously we continue to have also, I think, in the future. The first consequence, I think, is the relation between the past and the future in the nationalist narratives. So the idea of the decadence of the present and the promise, more or less, of a hopeful future. So we have, as for example, slogan as MAGA, Make America Great Again, or nowadays Make Europe Great Again, explain very well the idea of a glorification or nostalgia or idealization of the past, and an idea to, in the future, offer something that is related to this idealized and glorified idea of the past. The second consequence that I think is also crucial is related to, as you know, and whose scholars that study nationalism, we can have, or also populism, we can have different concept related to that could be also, or a different interpretation of the idea of nation. So if it's related to ethnos or not, in this case, and related to extremist narratives, the point of an ethnic, and nativist vision of nation is absolutely crucial. And so, for example, concept as chauvinism, xenophobia, or misogynism too are related to this idea of nation in a lot of cases. And also, when we are talking about narratives, usually we are referring to an in group and an out group. And in the case of the nation, we can see with some updating this idea, obviously, to an in group that is related to who is part of the nation, mostly related to an ethnic declination of what the nation is, and at the same time, an out group that are enemies. And so enemies conceived, and this I think is important, as existential threat to the in-group that is the nation. And for example, I think a very interesting example is related to the case of Spain, to what is the anti-nation that we work, for example, in this report too, because it's very a plastic example of that, that we can find at the beginning of the 20th century, just before the Civil War, but obviously during the Civil War and during Francoism, but also nowadays, in the case of Vox and the far or extreme right in Spain, there is the concept of anti-Spain. So according to the so-called nationalists in Spain, so far-right leaders or members, the anti-Spain are everyone that is not a Spanish nationalist. That means also Catholic, defending the monarchy, and a centralized idea of Spain, and that defend also the traditional or reactionary idea of the history of Spain. So related to the Reconquista against Islam. So in the past, and then the empire. So the empire in Americas, and the cultural heritage also of that empire nowadays. And in one case, there was an image that represents this very good, well, different image, but one that was very important also in the electoral campaign of 2023 in Spain, in July, a legislative election. There was a poster put in the street of Madrid by Vox, like 15 meters high, so very big, an old building, where you see a hand with the flag of Spain, throwing, like in the paper box, the enemy of Spain. So the communist flag, the independentist flag of Catalonia, but that is something traditional. It's related also to the Civil War or Francoist national Catholic discourse in the 30s and 40s and 50s of the last century. But also the symbol of feminism, of LGBTQ rights, or also the flag of the United Nations 2030 agenda. So globalism, obviously, as we know, for the rhetoric of the extreme right nowadays, as an existential threat to the nation. So this idea of the anti-nation, the outgroup, is quite related to an ethnic, obviously, and nativist vision of the nation, but also to something, an idea of the past of the nation that is reused and updated nowadays. And so this is linked, and also to finish my first intervention, to something that we suggest in this report, that is relating to extremist narratives, taking into account like the last 120, 140 years, more or less, in the case of Europe, but I think not only here. That is something where we can see a continuous updating. And so they use the metaphor of the rhizome theory as something that could reborn and change according to the context. And so in the case of the nation, we have the same example that I tried to make about anti-nation in the case of Spain, can offer as a vision as these narratives could be like update during time. And I want only to finish with two little considerations. That one is also related to the mainstreamization, finally, of some of these extremist narratives nowadays, not only about nation, obvious, but is related to a slogan or a concept that is one of the national pride. For example, in the case of Giorgia Meloni, she used in the last election in Italy 2022, but also the name of the party meeting last year, Italian pride as a slogan, or recover the Italian pride. Obviously, this could be not an extremist narratives. To be proud of your nation is something that could be democratic, could be also patriotic, left-wing, etc. But finally, what is hidden behind the way they present this idea is related to a nativist vision of the nation, or to also a nation considered like a living organism and the decadence of the present, etc., I talk about. So the point here is also that maybe we didn't find an answer, and I don't know if it's easy to find an answer working in different countries and during different historical period, is what is extreme. what is not only extremist or what is extremism, but what is extreme. To say I'm proud of my nation is something extreme, could be or not could be, but is linked also of how the banal nationalism Michael Billig talked a lot of times ago could be reused by different political or social actors, in this case mostly from the far right or extreme right wing parties, to conquer the mainstream and present themselves as not so radical or extremist. Thank you.
Thank you. If we leave the question, what is extreme, maybe for the end, what would be the relation between nature, science, and extremist narratives in moments of crisis or polycrisis? Yeah.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. It is an honor to be here. So, circulation of historical narratives is a kind of concepts that are coming back through time, and concepts that are so stable, so important that they keep resurfacing in our discourses. So we looked our contemporary discourses and we tracked back where it has started. So regarding knowledge, academic knowledge, it is about the spatiality of knowledge. So what is the right knowledge and how it is produced in a right way? So the main argument, of course, is that criticism against science, that it is unnatural. It is not a new phenomenon, but it started already in the late 18th century as a kind of counterattack against enlightenment, logic of enlightenment. This was romanticism. It was a kind of emotions, the first emotional turn of social sciences. So it was about emotions, mysticism, religion, and hierarchy. And of course, it was also a kind of denial of the French Revolution's understanding of nation, the citizen nation, which is defined by law. What are the rights and responsibilities of a citizen? So from that point, the counter argument was Volksgeist, nation, the spirit of the nation that not only embodied the national ethnic identity, but also referred to the natural or indigenous knowledge that is embedded in the national character. This is one route. The next route is in the Industrial Revolution, because Industrial Revolution was where there is a huge jump in scientific advance. And because the scientists failed to communicate, science and scientific achievement became utterly incomprehensible for the public. So they started to understand that whatever science is, it is far from normal life, far from everyday life. And this is how starts the ivory tower concept of science. Now, regarding what is natural or not unnatural, what is the right spatiality of science is about the discourse of urban versus countryside. And this is about modernity. I mean, this is a discussion about modernity. So from the 19th century onwards, academic institutions have been situated in urban environments. And urban spaces are perceived on one hand cosmopolitan, which means non-national, liberal, too open-minded, and represented by the middle class mostly, and too fast-changing, multicultural. So in opposition, the countryside was preserving values. It is more stable. It is based on the genuine society, relying on the peasant mind, right? That are in almost every language, there is this peasant mind. It is referring to common sense, pure logic, practical problem-solving capacity, as in comparison to artificial, to complex, theoretical, and debatable interpretative academic knowledge, which is therefore is unreliable. So the solution was we need to find the purest knowledge from the countryside that is close to nature, right? Rousseauian back to nature understanding, the idea. So, this is about the true knowledge, which creates a kind of healthier connection to society, to the nation. So this is how, for example, contemporary extremist movements are saving the forest, saving the countryside, saving the agricultural way of life, saving what is really the ultimate core of the values of society around. So nature is regarding as the source of health. So, and it is coming from the urban to technological to industrialized environment that people should distance themselves and seek for naturalism, vegetarianism. Hitler was a vegetarian, by the way. Vegetarianism, natural medicine, the natural way of life. So this is how, for example, the anti-vax movement is claiming the argument that they know better. And there is a distrust, complete distrust in academic knowledge that is saying that what is important for your health. And of course, it goes back to the nature and nature and nation relationship. And this is about the Herderian idea of the nature preserves the soul of the nation, right? So nation is as long strong and healthy as it maintains the core relation with or live in nature. So only the nature can guarantee the continuity of the nation. So the ideal space, the ideal home is, and the ideal livelihood is coming from the countryside and the agriculture. And this is about, once again, the Blut and Boden idea from the 19th century, which is about inherited right to the territory. Inherited right to the territory because it is yours. It is your nation possessive. So this is the first, this is the argument against migration, that it is these are not entitled to the territory. But it is also about the purity of the nation. Very seldom is known that actually the advancement of science is also creating a kind of extremist attitudes and extremist narratives. For example, in the 1920s and 30s, eugenics, right? Eugenics is coming from the advancement of science, medical sciences, where they all of a sudden understood that hygiene is important in the struggle against disease, right? So for the biology of the people was extended to the hygiene of the society. So this is how, for example, to improve the social hygiene, it meant that you needed to fight the diseases with the foreign element, the foreign disease of the society, and they were the Jews in the 30s. But this is also resurfacing in 2015 when there is the migration crisis. And they are also addressed as foreign species. Foreign species that are coming with all kinds of germs, and they don't have the same hygienic background. So this is about, we have to protect the body of the nation, the hygienic body of the nation. And regarding nature and nation in Slovenia, there is this generic values that contains the healthy and simple life of an athletic and religious and rural existence that embraces the traditional family and gender roles with a firm stand against abortion. This is rooted in the 19th century and with the Slovenian slogan "Svojih svojim," right? So each to identify with one's people. And it was a kind of political goal to separate the purity of one ethnic community and to protect the Slovenian core nation against the surrounding ethnic populations, I don't know, Serbs and Hungarians. So nature and society, and I will end here, coming from this idea that what is the natural knowledge about everything. So nature represents also the model for social order and the natural order of things. So the conceptions provide the argument for re-establishing hierarchical structures, like in the animal kingdom. How many of you heard the alpha male, notion? Alpha male, the toxic masculinity that is, so in the traditional trad wives movement. So biology should be a kind of model of ultimate knowledge, how to organize society, men and women's role. They must be different as in the animal kingdom, right? Homosexuality is against nature, and transsexuality is an artificial construction. So nature and biology should represent the true social values, and gender propaganda should be a kind of allowed into the common discourse in order to preserve the true knowledge, the true self of the nation and society.
That's yes, powerful. Claudia, since we are at the topic, what are the anti-gender narratives, and how can we define and interpret them further?
Okay, so thank you very much, Satsa. Thank you very much, the Institute, to give us this opportunity. So I coordinate the gender section with Buenael. Also, I work the section with Isidora, so it was a collective work. So first of all, we so in the report, we define anti-gender narrative. What is an anti-gender narrative? So it's an extremist narrative. So it's the big question, what is an extremist narrative? That denies patriarchy, the existence of patriarchy, denies gender as social construction. We must understand anti-gender narrative also as a more general opposition against women's rights, against left ideology, against supposed university elite. It's also a counter-attack against progress in women's rights or queer rights. And as all extremist narrative, anti-gender narratives evolved during the time, but we define 3 important moments of resurgence of this kind of narrative, anti-gender narrative, especially to respond against a strong feminist movement. So the first anti-gender wave is after the strong feminist movement during the 70s. So after the 70s, during this period, There are a lot of illegal recognition, abortion, access to contraceptive, abortion, or fight against gender violence. And after this, we see a backlash against women's rights. Very famous now in US state, Sarah Faludi coined this concept, fast backlash. During the 18, during the conservative government of Ronald Reagan, but in Europe also we see the same phenomenon during the 19th. For example, we see the apparition of the first masculine movement, divorced father, who fight against changes in gender. Another important moment of resurging of this kind of narrative, anti-gender narrative, appear at the beginning of the 21st century. At this moment, homosexual marriage law were passed in several countries in Europe, in France, in Spain, in Portugal. We see an important response against homosexual marriage, a lot of marriages for life. Also at this period in some countries, for example, in Poland, in Spain, in Hungary, the access to abortion was challenging. So we see also an important resurgence of anti-gender narrative. The last resurgence of anti-gender narrative appeared after Me Too movement. So Me Too movement had a transnational impact amplified by social networks, bolstering global feminist activism. At the same time, the Me Too movement caused many counter reactions. And now we can say that since Trump's election, we are in a new wave of anti-gender narrative, especially masculinist movement become stronger and louder. Trump, but also represent all model of masculinity against women emancipation. Yes, so now we're in a new anti-gender wave. Just to decide, so that this new anti-gender wave, you see also the repetition of all ideas about traditional roles against women's emancipation, especially about the body, about the for example, I thinking about the slogan, feminist slogan, "My body, my choice," and now I'm very famous influencer say, "Your body, my choice." So now again, we find the same problematic, the same issue as in the 70s.
It sounds very fast moving what you said, and I'm interested in the context of something that moves much slower, which is institutions. Katalin, if you could give us a little insight, how are political circumstances in Europe connected to science and institutional distrust? So are there different layers of historical heritage in different states that influence these contemporary situations?
I think I will start with the statement that I believe that the significance of institutions for extremist groups to target is deeply embedded in three issues. On one hand, of course, science is produced in an institutional framework, and institutions are those like this mediating science, the latest knowledge of what science can produce. And the problem from the extremist point of view is that we reach students because we teach research-based things in university or in research institutes. So we have research-based education, which means that we reach out to the next generation, right? Next generation of intelligentsia, of politicians, of, I don't know, entrepreneurs, the next generation. So we have influence. Secondly, we also publish through publications, through the media, popularizing plain language texts based on research. So we have an impact in society. And thirdly, perhaps the problem for extremist groups is that they define what it should be studying here, about in academia. So what is true science about is always about the national agenda. So driving the national interest. And of course, by changing governments and changing politicians, they always have different understanding what is the national interest. But nevertheless, the problem from the extremist point of view is that we are also getting resources from international agencies, that international agencies' interest can run counter with the national interest groups. So this is one problem. Secondly, what is also problematic, that institutions have an embedded contradiction in a sense that on the one hand, they maintain stability because institutions have been invented for a reason, in order to withstand small changes. But on the other hand, whenever there is a foundational crisis that needs a kind of complete change, institutions can also resist these kind of changes. So the problem here is that whenever there is a huge political transformation, like communism, collapse of communism, that was as big transformation as ever. But there are also a kind of continuity embedded in the institutions. So there is always a distrust that what kind of people are populating in an institution that stands for stability. So this is one problem. The third problem is that we academics and academia as institution is embedded in society. So whenever there is a polarizing trend going on in society, it will reach us. All right, it will reach us because politicalness has an impact on our funding. That's one. Second, politicalness have an impact on the public reception of knowledge, of science. And thirdly, polarization also reach the community, academic community. So we can be stripped or divided apart through politics or political polarization, because in the academics are also political animals. So polarization is here already in our midst.
Yes, thank you very much. And you mentioned communities and impact. So it's necessary to connect. Claudia, if you can, in short, let us give us an insight in the extremist narratives on LGBTQI plus rights. How is this evolving?
Excuse me.
The LGBTQI community, and how are the extremist narratives evolving regarding?
Okay. Yes. We have to say that traditionally, anti-gender narrative oppose to queer rights, LGBTQ plus rights, and women rights, but also anti-gender narrative oppose queer rights We see some issues, we see a shift on some issues in recent years. Okay, no, yes, okay. So, so for example, for many research, this shift, this evolution is a strategy called feminationalism, for example, about women's rights. It's a strategy used to improve their image, to give a more moderate image. I think about, for example, France, for example, National Rally Party. And this strategy is known as feminationalism. It's a term coined by Sarah Harris in her book in the name of women's rights. And this strategy use women's rights, feminist vocabulary also, but it's very important to see that how this narrative use, for example, feminist vocabulary to spread and racist or xenophobic narrative rhetoric. And the idea is immigrants are sexist, are misogynist, and the Western society is entirely egalitarian. For example, in France, National Rally has been using this strategy for years, and a very famous example appeared in the last president election in June 2024, when Jordan Bardella posted a video on social media X. In this video, Joan Bardella presents himself as the defender of women. He point out the link between insecurity and immigration. He highlights his fight against sexual mutilation, because only migrants do this kind of violence. So, and in France, this strategy has been used by far right, but also in Nordic context, the feminational strategy is very common in the narrative about nation, but I think maybe later when I will see more about that. And regarding queer rights, also I see the same phenomenon. So, for example, in France also, only a few years ago, several member parties of National Rally came out as gay. It's the same strategy as feminationalism. So the idea is to exclude non-European people. Say we are very open. Western countries defend queer rights, women's rights, but especially Muslim don't. Another example, for example, in Germany, the president of the Alternative for Germany, Alice Weidel, also came out as lesbian, and if I know wrong, she is married with
Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka. So yes, so we see this shift about gender, about LGBTQ plus rights, about women, linked also about immigration discourses, about nations. So yes, we have to understand this kind of narrative together, because this narrative works together, even if in the report we it's 3 6.
Yes. And other two narratives that work well together are usually freedom and democracy. And I was wondering if, Stephen, maybe you have a comment on historical revisionism. So how do you see historical revisionism, including the role of fascism and the role of concepts such as freedom and democracy, regarding the far-right parties and movements in contemporary debate?
Well, I think here we are between historian in an historical institute, so we know very well the importance of historical revisionism to change the vision of the past and to influence media and politician and also institution. And I think, well, obviously, historical revisionism is not something new. And we can like quote it the first negationist of the Holocaust works just after the Second World War, no? Omodris, Bardèche, and then Irving or Faurisson. But the point I think is not only that we had like some wannabe scholar or a supposedly journalist that spread a revisionistic view of the past related in a lot of times to colonialism, the history of the nation related to colonialism or fascism, dictatorship, or in some cases also Holocaust, obviously, but also that we have like something that is in the last 30 years mostly. Well, there is difference between obviously country in Europe, but I think is quite common. There is a continuous trivialization of the dictatorship of the past and fascism, and we can see also like something that we can call also circulation between like wannabe scholars, journalists and media, obviously social media, and then political parties, and in some case when some of these parties that share this vision of the past, they are in the institution. So, for example, we are a couple of days ago, as you know, there was the day in Italy celebrating the Day of the Remembrance of Foibe, no? Foibe until the 1989, 1991 was only like a remembrance of the neo-fascists. That tried to forget what Italian occupation army did in Yugoslavia in that time, and only talks about the victims of communist parties and etc., etc. Well, after the 90s, with the end of the First Republic in Italy, this narrative finally is like mainstream nowadays. So until in 2004, 21 years ago, was established a National Day of Remembrance of that victims, and is then spread by the media with TV series or movies, etc., etc. No? And it's one case is between others, or in Spain also the vision of the past related to the Civil War and Francoism, that just in the 90s or 20 years ago, before extreme or far-right parties enter in the parliament, there was a journalist coming mostly from the extreme left during the transition, Pio Moa, that sell thousands and thousands of books talking about the myth, the supposing myth that the left spread and imposed about the Civil War. So that finally the left was guilty of the beginning of the Civil War. Francoism was not so bad. And so finally we have like this trivialization that is not mostly an explicitly reivindication of fascism. Nowadays we have also that. Kanye West or Elon Musk in their own way, or some section of AfD in Germany, or obviously neo-fascism and neo-Nazism in all the countries that we have. But mostly is this dog whistle politics, no, with some slogan that could connect, no, could create some links with who really feel themselves fascist or Nazi, but also then with this idea that trivialization of the dictatorship. So in Italy or Spain, we have like a sentence that is quite used. Well, Mussolini or Franco also did good things. And so finally, you lost obviously an historical contextualization, etc., etc. So I think this is very important, briefly, because I'm a bit late maybe talking about that. But you asked me also about the concept of freedom and democracy that is very important now. And the other day we just talked here also about that related to new far right. And I think that in this idea of how try to rewrite history, obviously this with this realization of the past, we have also like an idea of freedom, but also of democracy that is completely disconnected with the concept of social justice. So finally, freedom nowadays is only freedom of speech. That in some cases is not freedom of speech, but is hate speech, but is related to that. And democracy is a democracy that is interpreted with the frame of the ethnic nation. So the demos is the ethnos. And so finally, I think here the point is also how some extremist narratives and some extremist actors that could be politician, pundits, influencer, or political parties or institutions sometimes, they try to appropriate the concept of freedom of democracy, presenting themselves as not as an extremist. I don't know if I answer you more or less.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to just toss the ball if anyone has any kind of question to ask. Now is the time. And in the meanwhile, I would just like to pose a question that actually when we had the discussion last time, our researcher colleague Jana Jareño posed, and I think it's really important to ask it over and over again. You finished with the actors on one side, and now I'm thinking of actors as researchers, citizens, members of society. What do you think, all of you participants here, how do we respond? Not what do we, how do we respond
to what? Because I was just caught up what Stephen said. This is, we are in the same project and we never really agree on anything. But he said that there is freedom and democracy, and I was wondering that what democracy? Illiberal democracy, sovereign democracy, or what democracy? Because we have a lot of great variety of what we can call democracy. And this is exactly how extremists are using it, this kind of shabby concept against us or against them or against somebody. So, and freedom is also a slippery term per se, because what freedom contains? Freedom of speech, but where is the limit of freedom of speech? Yeah. And this is difficult to define, per se. So, and the question was?
The question will come again.
What can I do? What can we do?
We also have a question online, two, actually. Yeah. And the first one is, are coordinated responses possible to reduce the influence, to deplatform far-right influencers, to lose their ability to network with a receptive audience on a given platform and thus their power? So this is the first question. And the second one is actually, what can academia do?
Okay. Not much, unfortunately.
Education.
Because when we look at what is extremism, it is a kind of challenge from the margins, right? But if you go to Russia, what is extreme is the liberal opposition, per se. So the question is that what kind of context we are talking about. And if we go to EU, look at Hungary. What is extremist right there? Like, it is mainstreamed. And this is exactly the problem here, that it is not only that we come up with a new strategy, because we could have, invented already. But the problem is, particularly in extremely polarized societies, that there are always two truths, right? Right or wrong, depending on where you sit, right? This is a black and white world. Now, in a black and white world, where there is no will in either side to create a kind of consensus or a bridge or something. We need to sit down and wait that somebody will destroy the other. In a black and white world, there is not much you can do. And because academia is a subsystem in society, we pretend that we are, safe, but we are actually embedded in this type of societies. And this is exactly the problem, that academia is also turning against each other. That if my interpretation can be, juxtaposed to your, and I am right, so you must be wrong. So this is a kind of new type of academia that we are entering because of the polarizing trend in society. And yes, we can do counter arguments, but the question is that if we are living in bubbles, that the bubbles don't listen to each other, then what to do? So yes, but I'm old and pessimist. So perhaps these are the young people who will come up.
I would like to be more optimistic, but I would like to be more optimistic. Maybe for me as academia, teaching is a kind of way to try to counter anti-gender narrative. Just teach after legal measure about network, but just for me it's teaching. One of the solutions. Yeah.
Well, trying to quickly answer to this big question of Jana that I think is quite impossible to offer. I think it's Jana, no? Yeah. No? I don't know. Well, the answer that is online. Well, I think obviously at the end of the report, we try to offer some recommendation. And these recommendations are not linked to all the Arenas project because we are working on the different teams and work package. And we need, I think, a couple of years more to try to have a more complete answer, but is related more to the historical roots, patterns, and updating of the extremist narratives in Europe that we just work in that task. One obviously is related to education, and the education system is obvious. It's not something new, but finally I think is one of the most important points. So I think there is one between others answer, but we need to work on that. And for example, to digital alphabetization that is important for young generation nowadays to try to check the info online, or for example, extremist narratives or conspirational theories or conspirative theories or whatever. Then the first question I think is like the $1 million question, and I think we don't have here the answer. My personal answer is that and I know if Katalin, I don't know if you share this and the others, but it's related that it's not possible nowadays that there is like techno bros that they have the property of a big company that they offer a public service, and they are like doing what they want. We just saw in the last weeks more than in the last years, and there is no democratic control over this public service. I think is one of the main points. How to exercise this democratic control is another question, and I think as a society we should start a debate about that. But I think it's something really urgent because we know the power that we have social networks. I don't want to say that far right is only through social networks that can spread extremist narratives, or that the extremist narratives exist only because social networks they are so powerful. But it is undoubtable that the social networks nowadays helps a lot to viralize no, extremist narratives, and the far right, they know the potential of the social networks. So social networks should be democratized. Internet should be democratized. And that's the point. And there should be, in my opinion, a public control.
We have time for another question if anyone has something to ask.
Stephen, maybe you said there should be a public control, but from which public?
Oh, yeah. I know what you mean. It's a good point. I don't have personally exactly an answer. I think as a society we need to think about that. I want to say my point is that nowadays in the field of internet, more or less, we are like in the industry in the middle of the 19th century. There is like the robber baron that they have like monopoles of, no, they have trust, and there is more or less no law. Nowadays in Europe, there is some new law, finally, after some years, but seems to be that the technology is so quick that the law is old in few months, no? So, but I think as a society, we need like really to sit down and not only stakeholders, not only politicians, but as a society, and understand that this is something really crucial for the future of democracy.
What society? I mean, what? Who? Who society?
People, Catalan people.
Okay, what people? So which one?
Everybody that lives in this case in Europe.
But there are how many extremists are living in society? So who society you select? And this is, I think, the problem, that society is politicized already.
It is good that it's politicized. Politics is something positive.
Is it? Because then the question is that, do we understand society as the left wing, or the liberals, right wing, or the conservatives who are not extremists? Who society you want to control and how? I mean,
I don't want to control society. I say that as a society, as democratic countries and institutions, we should talk about how to have a public control over big companies that they do everything they want. Simply that. I don't have like the magic answer to how to do it, but I want to say there could be like a citizens commission, there could be a parliamentary commission, there could be different kind of organism elected that they, according to some legislation, put some control to something that is, in my opinion, nowadays a public service.
In the last European elections, 1/4 is
voted for far-right parties, I know.
No, voted for only the Patriots. And if we take into consideration all the far right, is 1/3. So
25%.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but it's a lot, I know.
Yeah.
But if you want to wait more, so maybe they have a 50%, so they
Yes,
decided.
but this is also a kind of meaning that we have a European society where there are a lot of people are voting for certain parties. They are not necessarily extremists, but for them, these are the parties that represent. And all those people who are creating the laws, they are also political parties representatives, right? Mm-hmm. So how we can control society, social media is through laws, right? Mm-hmm. But the lawmakers are political parties, right? So this is the catch-22.
It's typical, yes. This is what I really I think what we mentioned in the introduction, that there will be probably some food for thought in the end. I think that this has been definitely achieved. We went from what is extreme to which society, what society. I think we can continue this conversation, but first I would like to thank all of you very much. And we're looking forward to new and further insights from Arenas, and would love to see you all again in Ljubljana as guests at our institute. And as we are wrapping up, I would also like to invite you to stay a little bit more if you would like. There is another event in half an hour, less than half an hour. It is a book event. It's a volume, Texts and Contexts from the History of Feminism and Women's Rights in East Central Europe, second half of the 20th century. So I think we can continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much.